Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lena, and on today's video I am creating some groove cut frames for these mirrors. If you're interested in learning more, please stay tuned. The mirrors that I have are 25.5 in length and 17.5 in width, and I'm making the frames out of these two scrap wood 2x4s. This pink one will be ripped down for the length of the mirror, and this one for the width of the mirror. And I am going to the table saw to rip down 4 pieces out of this one 2x4, and each piece is approximately 1/7 in width. And I'll be doing the same to this one, which I'll do a time lapse for you. Now that I have all of my pieces, I'm still working with the table saw to create these groove cuts that you see here. And these groove cuts will hold the mirror in place when I assemble the frame together. And here's an example of a dry fit test that I did. The groove cut was made about 1/4 inch away from the edge here. And then you can see the mirror right here, which will sit into that groove. And the way to do that with a table saw is to set up your fence on your table saw to the measurements that you want. So again, mine is about 1/4 inch from the edge of my wood piece here. And then if you look on the side profile here, you want to adjust your blade's height so that it doesn't go all the way through your wood. And then when you pass it through, it'll create that groove cut. I will be putting together the frame through miter joints like how you see here. And miter joints are 45-degree angles. And I'm going to explain the way that worked out for me, because when I first started out making frames, it was really confusing, even though it seems so simple. I went ahead and labeled this side length and this side width, so you know what I'm working with. And the most important thing is I want to find out the point of where I need to make my miter saw cut. And with that, I want to place the mirror into my groove cuts, like so. And then I want to find the point on my width section first. So I'm going to line it up next to the length side here to make sure it sits flush. Okay, to make sure it sits flush on the edge of this length portion, and that my mirror is all the way into the groove. And from the inside of the frame, I'm going to make this mark right here, which is basically this, the length side is the width. So I'm going to make that mark, and from that mark I know that this is the starting point and this is the end point of my miter saw cut here. And I'll do the same thing for the length. I'll just move down my width just a little bit, and then I'll bring up my length to make sure I get that measured. Make sure the mirror is still sitting into the grooves. And then make sure that is flush on this edge of the width now. And now I make my mark for this length side right here where it meets the inside point of the width, and that's the start of my miter saw cut, which will end here. And I've placed X's on each of the pieces that I need to remove. So I hope that makes sense, and I'm going to take it now to the miter saw to get that cut and show you how it looks in a dry fit test. A good tip is that when you've completed both miter cuts on one of your pieces, like right here, you could use it as a template to mark your next piece that you're going to cut. And since we're working with groove cuts along the bottom here, is to always make sure you're aware of how you're cutting your miter cuts, because you could easily take it to the saw and cut the wrong way, and then you have to start all over, so be careful. Here is the dry fit test of the mirror sitting into the groove of the frame. Looks pretty good. And we're going to move forward and create some splines in the corner, and that way we can insert a shim that you see here and put some wood glue and it'll hold all together. Here's another one. And I was able to make these shims out of old backing that I had, so I ripped down one piece with the table saw, and then I did 8 cross cuts on the miter saw to get all of these pieces. And what's cool is that it's the same width of my blade, so it fits perfectly into this spline. And before we get started on creating the splines, it's a good thing to mark which corners go together. So these two would be number 1, and I marked it on this side as well. And then over here would be number 2, and then the other side is number 2, and so forth. And that way when you're moving things around, you know which 2 pieces go together. I am working with the number 3 corners, and I am going to create my spline into this mark as well as this mark, and I'm going to stop once the blade hits the top markers up here. And so you just need to adjust your fence and the height of your table saw accordingly. So I'll do this one as an example. I made all of my spline cuts right here and right here, and now I am ready to start sanding, like how I did these 2 sides over here. Looks really good. And I am going to take a break from this mirror just because it needs more attention. All of the rip cuts from each of the sides, they're uneven, so I'll have to finish it another time. And you could definitely tell on this side here. I'll probably glue it up and then I'll plane it down. I'm now ready to glue the corners together. I have my Gorilla Glue out, and I put the glue on both sides of the shim here, and I am going to wedge it into the spline. And then I'll do the same thing to all 4 corners. After 1 full day of drying, this is how the glue looks on the shim and in the corners. And I went ahead and cut off these ends with a copping saw already. And then I'll show you on this one how I cut it with the copping saw right here. Okay, and then I'll just sand down these rough ends. Here are my corners after I did some sanding with the disc sander as well as an orbital sander. And you can tell it's a little bit rough around the edges because of my copping saw. It went into the frame. So I probably need to invest in some sort of flush type of saw, so that way I don't hurt my piece. But it looks okay. And then I also went ahead and added 2 screws to the back. I started off with a pilot hole, and then I put the screws in, and I just used a basic heavy duty cord that I had on hand, tied a slip knot on both ends, And this will be my hanging hardware just because I'm using what I have on hand, so hopefully it works. Okay everyone, here is the mirror hung up onto the wall. It's right above my dresser area here. There's the DIY lamp that we made last week. And it's kind of high up there only because I'm using an existing nail for another piece of artwork that goes right there. But I just wanted to show you how it looked hung up onto the wall. Here is another view and a closer shot of the frame on the wall. You can still see some of the pink from the 2x4 treatment, but it's okay. And one more shot of the mirror frame just sitting on top of the dresser. You could also style it that way and you don't even have to hang it up on the wall. And there you have it everyone, that's how I created these groove cut frames for the mirrors out of scrap wood. What's really cool with working with scrap wood is that you're able to grow and learn more, and you shouldn't be so worried about making mistakes because it is scrap wood. The only thing is it's a lot of patience because you'll have to use the disc sander, the planer, as well as making sure your measurements all align together. That's the hard part, but overall I think it turned out good. And I was able to practice on the miter cuts as well as creating the shims and the splines for this piece. And I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and watch the video. And until next time, another DIY coming at you. Bye.